A group of operatives have arrived at the crime scene. Just one day prior, a wedding was being held in the luxurious restaurant. Not everyone there was lucky enough to go home tipsy, and one woman even died during the celebration. This case turned out to be both strange and creepy. On the victim's feet, experts found metal shoes. They were red hot when the woman's feet were placed in them. The guest was then forced to walk, perhaps dance, until she died from exhaustion and injuries. Just imagine such news in modern reports of criminal activity, or as the plot to some movie. It would make a great detective story, but for some reason, they decided to make a cartoon out of this story instead. You may have already heard the story, but if not, no wonder. Chances are you've seen it in its Disney adaptation. Children's films, require a certain amount of censorship, so the original story of Snow White was slightly edited, like almost all the studio's cartoons. And if you ever notice some scary moments in certain Disney stories, then you can be sure the original fairy tales are even scarier, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Disney released this cartoon back in 1937. It was based on a fairy tale by the Grimm brothers called Little Snow White. Have you ever wondered what this story is really about? The wicked stepmother is apparently mentally ill. She has an unhealthy desire to be the most beautiful woman alive. And when she learns from the mirror that she is no longer such, she orders the huntsman to kill the girl who surpassed her in beauty. Not such a cool move, right? The hunter turns out to be a normal person, unable to slaughter a child. He lets Snow White go and lies to the queen. But when she finds out that her stepdaughter is alive, she decides to kill the girl herself. But in the end, the prince saves his beloved. Then there's the wedding, and they lived happily ever after. Not a very rosy story, but it at least has a happy ending. In the fairy tale told by the brothers Grimm, it's even worse. When the stepmother sends the huntsman to kill her stepdaughter, she orders him to rip out the heart and liver of the victim. The hunter deceived the sick pervert by bringing the organs of a piglet. The woman ordered the cook to boil them and ate them. She was sure that it was a human heart and liver, which would therefore equate to cannibalism, by the way. Among the Disney princesses, Snow White is the youngest, being all but 14 years old. In the fairy tale, she is half her age. 4 times the stepmother tried to kill a 7-year-old girl because she envied her beauty. This woman is most definitely not all there. The first time she ordered the hunter to deal with the child, but then she made the next 3 attempts on her own. At first, she disguised herself as a merchant and offered the girl a corsage as a gift. The stepmother laced it so tightly that the girl couldn't breathe. She was saved from suffocation by the dwarves, who returned home in time. The second time around, the woman gave Snow White a poisoned comb. The dwarves again saved their 7-year-old housekeeper. After all, the girl was exactly that. Granted, in a fairy tale, she is presented as the hostess of the house. It also says that Snow White cooked, made the bed, washed, sewed, and knitted. A 7-year-old child did all this for 7 men. Can you imagine what a burden this work must have been? But what other options did she have? Die in the forest from starvation, or attacked by animals, or die at the hands of a sick stepmother, which, by the way, happened. The woman gifts Snow White a poisoned apple. She bit off just 1 piece and died. The dwarves put the girl in a crystal coffin and mourned for 3 days. They noticed that her body did not change and decided not to carry out the burial. She lay like this for a long time, and her body did not deteriorate whatsoever. Nowhere is it said that she grew either. It's not likely this happened, otherwise the coffin would have become too small. It turns out that at one point, the prince fell in love and took the 7-year-old girl as his wife. By the way, in the original fairy tale, Snow White did not wake up from a kiss. The prince ordered the coffin with the girl to be delivered to the castle. One of the servants carrying the coffin stumbled, and the force of movement was so strong that the poisoned piece of apple fell out of her throat. The prince immediately proposed to the girl, and she agreed. Snow White's stepmother also came to the wedding. There they put red-hot metal shoes on her feet and made her dance until she died. How would you enjoy such a cartoon? The same thing happens in other classic Disney films. The fairy tales and stories underlying them most often turn out to be gloomy and frightening. Little Mermaid, for example, had to endure terrible torment. The finale of this cartoon ends with the wedding of the prince and Ariel. However, the original story of Hans Christian Andersen is not so good-natured, although it also has a happy ending in its own way. At first, everything matches up. The Little Mermaid falls in love with the prince and then saves him during a storm. a girl from the temple finds him on the shore, but he has no idea about the Little Mermaid. Ariel wants to visit her beloved, so she goes to the Sea Witch. She gives the Little Mermaid a potion to turn her into a human, but takes away her voice and also warns of the consequences. First, she can never be a mermaid again, which turns out to be a lie, by the way. Secondly, the potion will bring Ariel pain, as if she had already been pierced by a sword. On the other hand, she will get human legs and the ability to dance in a way that no human can. And here comes the catch. At every step, the Little Mermaid will feel such pain as though she were walking on knives. And finally, if Ariel wins the love of the prince and marries him, she will receive her soul. If not, then at dawn after the wedding of the prince with another, the Little Mermaid will die of a broken heart and dissolve without a trace into the sea foam. In spite of everything, she drinks the potion and passes out from the pain immediately on the shore. And so the prince finds her, now both naked and mute. She begins to dance for him, despite the excruciating pain at every step. The prince takes the Little Mermaid as his companion. She constantly dances, but for some reason he does not fall in love. It turns out that he decided that he would love only the girl from the temple who saved him in the storm. By coincidence, it was with her that the parents arranged a marriage of convenience for the prince. He confesses his love to the chosen one, and they play a wedding on board the ship. Ariel, heartbroken, desperately awaits the morning and her death. But the Sea Witch offers a new deal. The Little Mermaid can return to her original form if she kills the prince and pours his blood on her feet. The girl rejects this amazing offer and decides not to wait for death and do everything herself. Granted, she does not die, but instead becomes the daughter of air, since she greatly desired a soul. Now let's move on to the next Disney princess, Cinderella. She's doing just fine, only initially her sisters tried to deceive the prince. One cut off her toe to fit into her shoe, the other cut off a piece of her heel. Their actions were exposed, and after Cinderella's wedding, pigeons pecked out her sister's eyes. One who really hides her true story is none other than the beautiful Rapunzel. The Disney story tells of how the heroine escapes from prison and explores the world. The cartoon is based on a fairy tale again. It became popular thanks to the Brothers Grimm, but they only adapted an earlier story, recorded by Giambattista Basile back in 1634. The original version also ends happily, but before that, the beloved had to suffer quite a bit. The prince accidentally heard the singing of Rapunzel, imprisoned in a tower in the middle of the forest. Spying, he saw how the witch was going up to the girl and began to observe her regularly. Rapunzel herself let slip about her lover. According to one version of the tale, she asked the witch for a bigger dress because she was pregnant. According to another, she asked why it is harder to lift her into the tower than the prince. In any case, the stepmother was unhappy, and so she cut off Rapunzel's hair and banished her out into the forest. When the prince came to the tower again, the witch let the hair down, lifted him up. A terrible surprise awaited him. Then he either jumped down from sheer grief or was pushed by the witch. Either way, this resulted in him landing on thorny bushes and becoming blind. But at the same time, it seems that he failed to break a single bone, given that he wandered through the forest for several months afterwards. Once he heard the singing of Rapunzel, who now lived in the forest with 2 newborn children, her tears restored the prince's sight, and they went to his kingdom to live happily ever after. According to one version, Rapunzel even grew hair after her lover's touches. In the same collection of fairy tales by Giambattista Basile was the story The Sun, the Moon, and Talia. This is the story of Sleeping Beauty. It's both creepy and violent, but finishes with another "they lived happily ever after" for good balance. Princess Talia, who is called Aurora in the Disney version, gets a flax splinter in her finger and falls into a coma. The father believes that his daughter is dead, puts her on the throne, and leaves to grieve forever. One day, the falcon of another king passing by flew into the castle. The man went up to look for his bird, but found the Sleeping Beauty. And what did he do? Carried her to bed and gathered the fruits of love. And while in a coma or magical sleep, if you will, Talia gave birth to twins. One of them sucked his mother's finger, and the flax splinter fell out. The princess, bewildered, awoke and began to raise her children. What else could she do with them? Then the king wanted to see Talia again. As you understand, this happened at least 9 months later. He found her with the children, told the whole truth, and they became close. After a couple of days, the king was forced to return to his wife. One of the servants treacherously told the queen about the mistress with bastard children, and so she took the children by means of deception and ordered a dinner to be cooked from them. Like the huntsman before, the cook turned out to be a normal person, hiding the children instead. The queen watched with pleasure as her husband ate the meat at dinner. Later, she lured Talia, intending to burn her, but the king found out about it. And what did he do? Executed the traitor, burned his wife alive, and lived happily ever after with his mistress. No wonder the Disney cartoonists decided to omit the terrifying and dark parts of their princesses' stories. This is understandable, given that they are, after all, films for children. But the stories of the Brothers Grimm, even in the harsh 19th century, were still criticized and recognized as unsuitable for a young audience. In each new edition, the tales succumbed to censorship, gradually becoming less cruel and gloomy. Why do you think the fairy tales of old were so creepy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. But don't share what you've learned here with children or fans of Disney cartoons.